Good afternoon. My research project was on the Liberty merchant ships the U.S. built during the 1940s that played a major role in the Allied victory and the economic might that enabled the rapid development of the infrastructure needed to build and deploy those ships. As a soldier and a military historian, I can tell you that untold volumes have been written about the leaders, the strategies, the tactics, the major campaigns in every theater of that war. Little has been written about the economics of the war. Some of you may be familiar with the acronym DIME: diplomacy, information, military, and economic, the main factors that shape how a nation achieves national objectives and how the U.S. and allies won, and the mistakes made by the Axis that led to their defeat. They're all valuable lessons we can learn from. One of the main figures, but certainly not the only one, was Henry Kaiser. The son of German immigrants, he got his start as a photographer in Lake Placid and then got involved in the construction industry in the Northwest. In a nutshell, he did that because the father of the girl he liked demanded that he prove his financial stability by building a house for his family, showing assets of $1,000, that would be about $35,000 today, and have a monthly income of $125, that would be about $4,400 today. He moved to Washington State, got involved in an industry in which he had no experience, and met his objectives in 10 months. He married the girl in 1907. If it were me, I'd probably still be single. By the 1930s, he was as big a figure in the building industry as Donald Trump was as a builder in the 1980s. He was the fabulous Kaiser who would run 7 of the 18 shipyards that were building Liberty ships and was pumping them out at record speed, literally. One of his yards produced a ship from laying the hull to launch in just over 4 days. He did this utilizing innovation that he learned from other industries as well as brilliant management. You see his name today in Kaiser Permanente, which began as the health program he started for his employees in those shipyards. The problem the U.S. faced was a woefully neglected military. By policy, we were a neutral nation determined not to get involved in another war, and having a military to prove it. General Marshall called us a third-rate power. Hap Arnold, in charge of the Air Corps, said they had plans but no planes. The Navy was only able to operate in one ocean. Of all the belligerents, we were in last place. The solution began in 1936 when Congress passed the Merchant Marine Act, which was the mechanism used to get us on our feet. You can draft an army, you can train pilots, but until you have the means to project them and sustain them, you have nothing. The plan worked incredibly well. The chart on the left-hand corner tells the story like no other. All the other belligerents, friend or foe, barely registered compared to us. Production was the most decisive battle of the war, and we won it hands down. German needs were different. The Kriegsmarine, the German Navy of World War II, started out with what Germany was allowed to keep after the Versailles Treaty restricted them. The legacy fleet was built to defend Germany's far-flung colonies that they no longer had. The government reasonably placed the priority on the Army and Air Force since they had no ocean to cross. They developed the Z Plan in 1939 to build a Grand Navy starting in 1946, which was a bit late, to take on the Royal Navy and later the U.S. Navy. It was never built. The main need they had was U-boats. The subs needed to sink Allied shipping. The dilemma faced that we were building them at a faster rate than they could sink them, and sinking the U-boats at a faster rate than they could build them. Finally, the Japanese faced the problem of transporting oil to keep the war machine moving. With the rapidly expanding Japanese empire, the more they grew, the worse the problem got. Soon they had 6,000 kilometer supply lines. Tankers were a big need for them, and the U.S. knew it. The tankers were the primary targets for our subs. As a result, from 1943 to 1945, we were sinking them at a faster rate than they could be replaced. Without oil, men and resources could not be moved or supported. Tanks couldn't roll, ships couldn't sail. In the end, it was production that mattered, and no one came close to matching us. Production, part of the E in DIME, isn't a silver bullet. In the 1960s, we vastly outproduced the North Vietnamese, but were unprepared for the information warfare they waged on our campuses and news networks. But in terms of the economic factors of World War II, yes, production was key. This was my research. If you have any questions, comment in the discussion section, and I appreciate it. I will show next the bibliography for the presentation.